We have just heard in its entirety what's called the Passion narrative, according to the Gospel of St. Mark, right? It's good to hear it all at once instead of in little snippets, right? To hear the full story of what Jesus went through for you and for me. This is famously called Palm Sunday, right? Because we receive palms and we wave them and sing hosannas, but it's more officially known as Passion Sunday, right? Because this is the passion of the Lord. And I appreciate that the word passion is used to describe the sufferings of Jesus and his death for us, because it's his passion for his Father and for you and I. It's love for us that gave him all the motivation to love us till the end, to leave every last drop of blood he could possibly have shed for you or for me. He did it because he loves us. It's the passion of the Lord. The cost of his love for us leads to the crucifixion. But this is something that doesn't mean to make us feel heavy or guilty about this, but rather to feel the appreciation and to feel loved, to feel that this is the extent of God's love for us. His arms are stretched wide on the cross for you and me to love us, to gather us into his heart. And so this passion of the Lord is something that I think about, and this love that we have with God often has obstacles. And one of the obstacles is suffering. When we experience sufferings, inconveniences, problems, anxieties, instead of turning towards God, we often experience these things as wedges between us and God, and there's a distance now between us. We blame God for our problems. We question his goodness or his power, where we isolate ourselves. We can feel lonely. We can almost be like when Jesus cried out on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Right? Quoting Psalm 22. Right? We can feel that sense of alienation. But Jesus quotes this psalm because he is quoting Psalm 22, which starts negative and terrible and this sense of abandonment, but it ends with hope of the salvation for all. Right? And so it's a beautiful moment that he's saying this psalm knowing how it ends, to give us hope, so that when we feel sufferings, that it's not a source for us to feel separation from God, but to remember that all these things, because of Jesus, lead to fulfillment and resurrection and life. And so for us, when we're experiencing sufferings and problems, instead of it being a wedge for us, it needs to become a source of deeper closeness with Jesus, a moment of deeper intimacy. Why? Because Jesus understands our sufferings. He gets what we're going through. He's not high and mighty up there in all his glory, just thinking, oh, those poor people down there. He gets it. I remember one time in particular when I was going through a difficult moment in high school, and I was just stressed a little bit about my being blind, and I was just crying out to God and saying, God, do you understand what I'm going through? Like, this is really tough, and like, what do you want to say to me? And I sort of cracked open my Bible and put my finger down on, it was the passage that we just heard from in the Passion narrative from Gospel of St. Mark, where they said, and then they blindfolded him and hit him over the head and said, prophesy. And I was like, well, of all the verses of the whole Bible for me to put my finger on, that one. And it was like Jesus saying, I understand you. I get you. I get what you're going through. Even I was blindfolded. I know what it's like to be blind, right? And to have people make you guess who's, hitting them or whatever. It's so this idea of the Lord's intimacy with me. And so instead of feeling separated from God and alone in my sufferings, I felt closeness to God because of his great love for us and his passion for us. He also can now identify with us, and he understands what we're going through. So for us, if we look on this Passion Sunday at what we're experiencing in life right now, maybe we're going through emotional sufferings or sufferings of situations in life or broken relationships or physical sufferings or the suffering of loved ones who are suffering around us, and we have to suffer with them, helplessly, it seems. All these various versions of suffering that we could be going through. Maybe it's different addictions or problems or whatever it is. May this today, of all days, not be a day for us to be separated and alienated from God. May we not feel abandoned by God, but rather may we feel that closeness with a Jesus who understands you and me. He gets it. He went through it. And he promises us that if we stick with him, we know where it ultimately leads to resurrection and glory. There's details in today's gospel that St. Mark puts in on purpose so that it will make more sense later in the resurrection account. For example, talking about the specific linen cloth he's wrapped with from Joseph of Arimathea, the tomb that he's in with the stone rolled over it, and the markings on Jesus. So that when he is risen, these details come out again. They find those linen cloths rolled up and perfectly folded. The stone is rolled away. The wounds of Jesus are all healed except for his glorious wounds. And so all these things come back later. And so too in our life. What we sow in tears, those details God will translate and transform, that we will reap them in joy later. And so as we bring the bread and wine forward for Mass and continue with this liturgy, let us bring to the Lord our sufferings, our problems, things that we would normally put as a wedge between us and God and alienating ourselves, and rather let's bring them to Jesus. He who understands you and me, he gets it, and in this Mass may he transform it into something powerful for us, knowing that God weaves all of these things together for the good for those who love him.